is the youngest member of California's congressional delegation. And the third youngest member in Congress. Do I have any sisters here from California today? Congresswoman Jacobs serves as the freshman representative to the House Democratic Steering Committee and Policy Committee, and sits on the House Committee for Foreign Affairs, the House Armed Services Committee, and the House Select Committee on Economic Disparity, Fairness, and Growth. Proudly representing California's 53rd Congressional District, please give a big sister's welcome to Congresswoman Sara Jacobs.
All right, one more shout out for the Californians over here. All right, and I know we've got some San Diegans in the room. Local 619, where are you guys? Woo! All right, well, thank you so much, Sanad, for the introduction and for everything you're doing for the carpenters and this craft in our community. And thank you to General President McCarran, who I know couldn't be with us today, and to General Secretary Treasurer Flynn for having me here. I'm also happy that we have representation from the Biden and Trudeau administrations. Wendy Chun-Hoon and Minister Patty Hajdu, thank you so much for being here. It was so nice meeting with some of you ladies yesterday, and I'm so excited to be here with you again this morning, mostly to thank you for all the work that you're doing for this industry and to make it one that actually works for women. It's really exciting to be here in Vegas with so many people who share my values because, let me tell you, that is not always the case in Washington, D.C. But I know all of us here in this room, we're fighting for a better future for our country, where one job is enough, where we don't have to worry about accessing health care and wondering how to pay for it, where we feel safe at work and have an opportunity to grow and learn and are treated with dignity and respect. And all of you here, you're the heart and soul of these efforts. The sisters in the Brotherhood have been breaking down barriers each and every day, proving that women can and do belong in what's otherwise been a man's world. So yesterday I did a tour and I saw the poster of Margaret Ellings, who became the first woman initiated into the United Brotherhood of the Carpenters in 1935. And since then, we know that women have been proving your worth on the job site time and again, and have been strong, active members in the union. But I think all of us here in this room know it wasn't easy for Margaret then, and it still isn't easy for many of you now. I know I was talking with you and you shared some stories of sexism and skepticism, of women carpenters arriving on a job site and the foreman questioning your ability to do the job, of assuming you're an apprentice when you have 20 years of experience, of how you're often the only woman on a job site with maybe 300 men. And believe me, I've been there too. My entire career, I've often been the only woman in the room or the youngest person in the room, and usually both. And people don't see my experience first, they see my gender and they see my age. So before I finally decided to run for Congress, I was 28 at the time when I first decided to run, and I had my friends write down all of the meanest things they could possibly think they could say about me and read it to me over and over again to get me used to what I might hear on the campaign trail. I thought it would help me grow a thick skin and prepare me for what it would be like to run. But honestly, nothing could have prepared me for the constant and cruel comments that I got about my appearance and my gender. How I should look sexier so that men would want to vote for me. Maybe I should film ads in a bikini. How my hair wasn't voluptuous enough. My voice was too high, I speak too quickly. How I just didn't look right sitting at the head of the table, but they weren't sure why. I know why. How maybe I should consider running for school board instead of Congress because I'm just not ready, and then 2 seconds later, those same people would go to another Democratic candidate who's a man and younger than me and tell him that he was the future of our party. People calling me honey, sweetie, baby when I'm sharing my ideas. And even now as a member of Congress, I'm regularly mistaken for a staffer or an intern. And recently, I was in a classified briefing on a very serious topic and had a policy disagreement with a colleague of mine. And instead of engaging on the policy disagreement, he just, in front of everyone, called me a silly little girl. So let's be clear about one thing. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being an intern or a staffer. Our offices and job sites wouldn't run without them. But it is, yeah. I know, we've got a lot of apprentices in the room here. But there is a problem when people are so unfamiliar with seeing women in positions of leadership that they assume that being an intern or an apprentice is the only thing we could possibly be. And we know that these comments, these subtleties of sexism, which sometimes are not very subtle, are designed to undermine women's credibility and worth and are pervasive in every professional field and area of our society. That's one of the biggest reasons I thought it was important for me to run for office, to fight this sexism head on, to hopefully make it easier for the next young woman, to make sure we're having the discussions that represent diverse perspectives and life experiences, and that these discussions turn into policies that reflect our country and ultimately help those most in need. Because we need people to see leadership that looks and sounds different. There are so many things that are so normal to us and our existence as women that are somehow treated as taboo or separate or not important. A few months ago, in a speech on the House floor, I talked about using a period tracking app. I wasn't trying to be radical. I was just talking about my concern with data privacy that are very real for millions of people. And I went to talk to some of my colleagues after the speech about those concerns, to talk about legislation I was proposing to solve the problem. Man, you have never seen grown men squirm as much as when I tried to talk to them about my period. So many of them had no idea that women track their periods, let alone that there are apps that help you do it or how any of them work. And I found out later that I was the first person in at least 35 years, probably ever, to talk about my period on the House floor. But that's pretty wild, because having your period is like one of the most basic parts of so many of our lives. It happens every month. For like half the country. And our government is pretending like it's something to be ashamed of. But we have to talk about these things. We have to talk about them so that our policies actually reflect the needs of our country. These aren't side issues. These are kitchen table issues. And across every industry, not just Congress, we need more diversity to reflect our country. We need more unions to fight for working people, more women, carpenters, more women in leadership, and more mentors for those coming up. And before anyone goes there, I'm not saying that there's no place for older men or men in general in Congress or in the carpenters or anywhere else. Far from it. It's just that their perspectives and lived experiences are already well represented in just about every workforce and job site, while ours just aren't. And that's why the work you all are doing, encouraging and helping each other, getting more sisters into the Brotherhood, is so important. Because we know that we're going to need new policies. We're going to need policies that encourage women and families, like equal pay and affordable and accessible childcare and access to contraception and abortion services. And the lack of women representation and women leadership is also helping to drive this new wave of anti-women rhetoric and policies. And that's painfully clear when Republican men, and sadly sometimes women, talk about calculating your pregnancy, not knowing that, for instance, 1 month pregnant is actually just the first day of your missed period. And that's why it's so important that we have more people around the room. And that's why, like many of you, I was horrified and outraged and so freaking angry when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, eliminating the constitutional right to an abortion. Because as one of the very few women of reproductive age in Congress, This was very personal to me. Reproductive health care is literally my health care. It is the only doctor I often go to. And I know we have a big room with people from all over the country. So let's be clear about one thing. We can have different opinions on abortion and still agree that the Supreme Court and the government has no business making decisions about our bodies and taking away our rights to decide if, when, and how to start a family. The Supreme Court does not know more about my body than I and my healthcare provider do. And the bottom line is, people are going to die because of this decision, especially women of color, women living in poverty, rural women, young women, and folks in the LGBTQ+ community. So now, we have to fight. We have to fight for our own rights. We have to fight for our daughters, because we cannot allow them to grow up in a world where they have fewer rights than our mothers and our grandmothers did. And I'm proud that the House of Representatives, under the amazing leadership of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, has already passed legislation that would codify the right to abortion into law, that would codify the right to contraception into law, that would protect those who cross state lines for abortion access. But we can't stop there. Because the post-Roe era is not going to look like the pre-Roe era. This is not our grandmother's fight. We have a lot more tools at our disposal now, but so do they. And in the 50 years since Roe v. Wade was decided, our society has created a vast digital surveillance system, one that can and is going to be used against people who are seeking abortions and those who are helping them. That's why in June, after the draft decision was leaked, I introduced the My Body, My Data Act. It's a bill that would create a new national standard to protect personal, reproductive, and sexual health data. Because right after that draft decision came out, I heard from so many friends, constituents, peers, who were all worried about their reproductive health data, from period or fertility tracking apps, from Google searches, that this data could be used against them. I mean, I use a period tracking app. I get it. It's scary. And of course, it wasn't just Democrats who were reaching out to me. I heard from so many constituents from across my district, from every political spectrum, who are worried about what comes next, and right now we should be worried, because right now there is no protection for that data. It can be sold to the highest bidder. It can be used however someone wants it to. This is a scary time. And while states across the country are banning abortions, support for families who actually have children is basically non-existent. And look, I know a lot of you might be Republicans yourselves, so let me just say that the Republican Party in Congress, my colleagues in Congress, they aren't the party of small government or protecting personal liberties anymore. They aren't fighting to make our communities safer from mass shootings. They aren't fighting for more people to access health care. In fact, they're actively fighting against all of us having more control over our own lives. Last month, we voted on a bill to codify the right to contraception, to birth control. Guess how many Republicans in Congress voted for it? 8 out of over 200. Contraception. Apparently, we have to fight for our right to birth control now. Right? And then they're shouting to anyone who will listen that if you have a kid before you're ready, or if you want fair wages and protections at work, well, you're just not doing it right. You're just not willing to pay your dues. So let me tell you, after taking the tour yesterday of your training facility, I feel very confident in saying this. Any one of you would be an awesome member of Congress. And I can guarantee you, my colleagues would never be able to build a high rise. So, if my colleagues are against policies that protect the health and safety of kids, what do they stand for, and who do they represent? Not me, and not the millions of Americans like all of you who want more for the next generation. You know, the other day I was on a panel with a Republican colleague of mine who was trying to tell the audience that we can't afford investments in childcare. So here's the thing. We save $6 for every $1 the government invests in quality early care and education programs. Policies that invest in kids have the highest return on investment. Not to mention the fact that the U.S. economy loses $1 trillion to the cost of childhood poverty every year, and another $1 trillion to the fact that many women aren't in the workforce, in part because they can't find childcare. So don't listen to anyone who tells you that we can't afford to invest in childcare, because the fact of the matter is, we can't afford not to. And that's what real fiscal responsibility is. You know, my colleagues talk a lot about fiscal responsibility. They talk a lot about taking control of your own lives, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. But they're not letting us have access to birth control. They're not giving us childcare to watch our kids while we go to work. I'm not sure exactly what control they think that we have. If we want more women in the workforce, if we want more parents in the workforce, we have to make childcare more accessible and affordable. And I know many of you know this personally. If you don't have reliable, affordable childcare, making it to work on time, focusing on your job can be nearly impossible. And if you're struggling to find childcare every day, or you're worried if your kids are safe and healthy, you can't fully focus on your job, and you're certainly not able to grow and seek new opportunities. And I was talking about this with some of you yesterday, and you shared with me that finding childcare was a major impediment to being able to do your jobs. That some of you have to work nights so that your family can watch your kids while they sleep because it's too hard to find childcare during the day. That you're getting by asking your friends and family to help out, but you don't know how much longer they'll be able to do it for. This is a crisis. In San Diego, where I'm proud to represent, it's one of the wealthiest counties in the country. We've got Fortune 500 companies, we've got mansions on the beach, and yet before the pandemic, 70% of families with children under 5 didn't have access to the childcare they needed. And we know the pandemic has only made it worse. In the first year of the pandemic alone, more than 500 childcare centers closed in San Diego. That's why I've been working every day I've been in Congress to address the childcare crisis and improve our social safety net. Because we need childcare, and we need more than childcare. We need systemic change to our entire social safety net to support kids and families. Allowing kids to live in poverty is a policy choice. A choice that my colleagues are making every single day. And we can't work around the edges any longer. We have to take big steps to rebuild a more just and equitable society, one that invests in young people and in families and gives everyone dignity and agency over their own lives. Because that's what this all really boils down to, dignity. The universal inherent dignity in being able to make decisions about your own lives, the dignity of having your basic needs met, the dignity of being able to support your families. And no matter what job you're in, from childcare to the construction industry, one job should be enough. And especially when the government is investing in these jobs, they should be good jobs where workers are treated with dignity and respect, and that means safe working conditions, a living wage, and decent benefits. I fought hard to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law, and I'm so proud that Davis-Bacon protections apply to so many of the construction projects, guaranteeing these are jobs with competitive wages and benefits. It's a basic labor protection, and we have to keep fighting until Davis-Bacon applies to all federal construction spending. And we need to do more to ensure that more people, especially women and people of color, have access to good union jobs, which will boost employment in the construction industry and make sure folks have the support and resources they need to stay in the industry. And we've seen the powerful results of unions, especially UBC. Construction has the lowest gender pay gap of any industry. The incredible women in this room are to thank for that. And I'm also proud that the bipartisan infrastructure law expands funding for workforce training, including apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs, and that local hiring goals will help boost hiring for underrepresented groups. But we need to go further to fight for more funding for apprenticeships. Hundreds of thousands of Americans across the country rely on registered apprenticeships every year for paid hands-on learning opportunities that have a pathway into the workforce. Investing in registered apprenticeship programs benefits workers, it strengthens our economy, and it helps employers build a pipeline of talented and dedicated workers. And this is key, because as we work to rebuild and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, we have to be using every tool at our disposal to help workers find jobs and train them for these high-quality jobs. And then we need strong enforcement for these protections. We need to make sure that your rights are protected, and we need more funding for worker protection agencies like OSHA to address a glaring problem that jeopardizes the safety and health of every American worker. Right now, at current funding levels, OSHA can inspect each workplace within its jurisdiction approximately once every 162 years. 162 years. So we have to do better to ensure that OSHA can actually serve workers and serve the American people. And we need to protect women against harassment in the workplace, reduce the gender pay gap, and pass the PRO Act to bolster workers' rights to unionize. Yes. The PRO Act will update organizing for the 21st century to protect workers against corporations that put profits before worker safety, fair pay, and other basic benefits. The pandemic exposed a lot of harsh realities, and one of them was the urgent need to protect and strengthen workers' rights and worker safety. Workers are essential to our economy, to our communities, to our country, and workers like you are not expendable. So one of the most important things I've learned throughout my career, and especially in Congress, is that finding good mentors is incredibly important. Throughout my career, I've relied on mentors, and pro tip, mentors don't just have to be people who are older and more established than you. In fact, for me, some of my best mentors are my peers who are going through what I'm going through and know what it's like. In Congress, I have been so lucky to call Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, a mentor and a friend. And I know she's a great friend to the Carpenters, too. Nancy Pelosi. Speaker Pelosi knows what it's like to make a name for yourself in the old boys club. And even as Speaker of the House, she is still sometimes the only woman in the room. But she solved that by not only bringing more women into the room, but giving them a seat at the head of the table. And there are so many members in the House I'm lucky to know and whose support I rely on. And I hope all of you can find the same. Find a mentor who has been there before, who's blazed a trail, or honestly, who just gets it. And I know that Sisters in the Brotherhood prioritizes recruiting and mentoring with regional councils across the country, so take advantage of that. It's easy to feel alone. But the more of us who occupy the space, who hold positions of leadership, who talk about our lived experiences, the more we can help every other sister who wants to come next. And that's why I'm so grateful to each and every one of you for making this work easier for the next young woman who wants to work in the construction industry or join this union. You're making it easier for every young girl to realize that she can be a badass pile driver or mill worker or lather or anything else.
Yes.
I mean, I saw what you guys do yesterday. That is badass. Some of you yesterday asked me if I have any advice for you. And honestly, I think your job is harder than mine, so I don't know that I have any. But if I do, it's this. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't know enough, or you're too young, or you're too female to have an opinion or to make a difference. You are enough, just the way you are. And we need you. We need your voice. We need your creativity. We need your opinions now, more than ever. Because we are in the middle of a really, really difficult moment. It's dark. It's hard to feel hopeful sometimes. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, and I have faith. I have faith that women across the country and around the world are fed up with having to choose between work and family, fed up with our rights being stripped away, and we are going to fight back. We, together, are going to build the future that we deserve, build a government that looks like us, a job site where our talents and experiences are respected, and a country and a world that is worthy of us. And we're going to do it together.
Yes.
So thank you all so much for everything that you do. Thank you for having me here today. It's such an honor to be doing this work alongside all of you. Thank you.
Woo, y'all felt that? Come on, give her another round of applause.